protection, incredible discretion. Ladies, ladder leaks or not, let's strengthen our pelvic floors. Squeeze the day to help prevent ladder leaks. Squeeze the day with always discreet. Here you go.
No idea what I got that from. Just came out of nowhere.
You go round at the moment, so not bad.
That makes me feel much better.
With you for life. Isn't it right that you and your friends have whisky? What's the whisky was all outdoorable? Unleash the sunshine freshness, drying outdoors of your clothes. So your nose is being hosted by spring itself. Fresh. With all outdoorable, fresh, as if dried outside. Irresistibly smooth, melting chocolate. From the Mint Master Chocolatier, you choose the mint will provide the bliss. Discover Indoor Gum 7%.
At Wix, our design consultants won't rest until they've helped create a kitchen you can be really proud of. Whether it's your first home or your forever home, there are options to suit every budget. With kitchens from under £3,000. Book your free kitchen design appointment today. Feel house proud with Wix.
Is that steady return driving you to Daddy? Look, it's back again. Stop juggling and take control with Flash. Simply shake up the dust magnet's fluffy fibers to trap and lock that dastardly dust wherever it lurks, without putting objects around. Done. That's the magnet. The bus against dust. This
Want it? Buy from Vinted. Download the app.
Every death has a story. His death was ruled an accident.
They fall down the stairs.
A heart attack. The body's reaching out to you, saying, look closely.
People are crying for justice from the grave.
There were cuts and gashes and bruises. She was fighting someone.
Are these lacerations due to somebody striking her with an object, or is it due to a fall? I was convinced that I had 2 murders on my hands. The body tells us something's wrong here.
I don't think anybody would have expected what we found.
With physical evidence, physical proof, the manner of death changed from accident to homicide. I died at the hands of someone else.
Who's responsible for these people's deaths?
We want the right answer. We want to get justice.
The buck stops with the forensic pathologist.
Tell Me How I Died. Wednesdays at 9 on Crime and Investigation. Psst.
Do you want to be a free man?
Time to go.
Well, you'll need a few friends.
Dick and Eric have to love British humor.
And you better select your safe house.
Head, the chair, and the toilet.
Make sure you know where you're going.
I was able to draw maps.
Yes.
And of course, you can't look back. You can't contact family.
And then
Escape for freedom. What can go wrong?
it's definitely a dangerous place. Great Escapes with Morgan Freeman. Tuesdays at 9. Brand new on Blaze.
The 7th of November, 2022. Travis Taylor and Nick Pope are in Wapwallopin, Pennsylvania, to see how MUFON investigates UFO sightings firsthand. They arrive at the home of Robert and Melissa Skirchak. The Skirchaks are looking for answers as to what's occurred on their property several months earlier.
So whereabouts did this take place?
Right behind you in the grass
In
area.
the grass area.
Lead the way, show us.
So it's this close to the house?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, this area right here.
I say we go back and get the equipment out of the vehicle, and then we'll let the MUFON guys come do their thing again.
Nick and Travis are joined by MUFON field investigators Robert Spearing and Jason Albertson. Jason and Robert will retest the area for radioactivity and collect more soil samples on the Skirchak property. The goal is to see if any lingering effects from the initial incidents remain.
Jay's going to check for residual radiation, an EMF field, residual EMF field, and we're going to see if there's anything subground, metallic underneath. When we do that, if it's safe to go back in, we're going to do some soil samples.
Sure.
So let's do it.
Jason actually has a pretty good background for this type of investigation. He's from a military background doing chemical weapons disposal. So he's familiar with radiation, electromagnetic fields, and that type of scientific measurement. Do you remember where it was? And understanding those phenomena.
Just about here. Now, normal radiation levels in this area of Pennsylvania are about 50 to 68 clicks per minute.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's pretty much 65 right now, so I don't see any sort of dangerous radiation.
Did you find anything with the metal detector on your initial search?
Initially, no. Nope. So, Jason, you said you took samples outside of the spot.
Yes.
So you took soil samples from the pond, grass samples, water samples, soil samples here, and the soil samples near the pond were not the same, or they were the same if they were here?
They were different.
Okay. The interesting thing, though, is that right here, just 10, 20 feet away, you have different minerals in the soil than you do there, and you would expect the runoff, since that's downhill, it all to be the same, which is odd.
Jason and Robert are going to take fresh samples of the soil and test it again.
This is where you kind of got set yourself, right? As soon as I got down to the ground, that's when I felt different parts of my arm, on the inside of my arm. Yeah, we'll get some graphs and get through from now. And then we get a control sample. Yeah, we can do that way. Yeah, I'm gonna hold on to this whole sample. All right. So we'll take the control sample. Yeah.
So this then gets labeled, gets sent back to the lab, and you get the chain of custody.
You've got some initial data. If it was just simply something on the surface, it's been enough time now, a lot of that should have washed away. So it might be that you'll find a different sample than what you found before. That's it. We're good. I can't wait to see the results.
For Travis and Nick, the Skirchak case has shown them the methodical nature of MUFON investigations.
I think MUFON did a great job here. I was very impressed with both the investigators. Everything I witnessed them talk about and actually do resonated with me in terms of the sort of thing that we did in the government.
The case here at the Skirchak residence is a really interesting one because there's actually some physical evidence left behind that can be investigated. And the MUFON guys did a good job taking soil samples, electromagnetic measurements, gamma ray measurements, and things of that nature. This is the type of process that we're going to have to standardize more if we're ever going to get to the bottom of this phenomenon.
The Skirchak sighting is one of MUFON's most intriguing cases of 2022. But deep in MUFON's files are a host of other sightings, many with video evidence.
What the hell are those?
That cannot be explained. Gosport, the 9th of January 2017. Just before 11 p.m, residents of this city see something unusual in the night sky. Dramatic video is captured of three lights converging, separating,
Going back again.
and then reconverging. For MUFON investigators, this footage was particularly exciting.
What makes this video especially compelling is that you have the visual evidence, multiple witnesses, and it still stands out as something we can't explain. That's what we call the Category 3 case. It's the one with the most potential to be unexplained.
On the 31st of December 2021, an even stranger video of an alleged UFO was sent to MUFON by soldiers at Tool Army Depot in Utah. The soldiers filmed a strange light hovering in the sky, for 5 consecutive nights.
If it were some kind of a military plane, we would be able to detect it. We have our ways of finding out that this is a military craft. We can check all the information in the area. There was no craft at that time. What makes this case so interesting to us is that after this happened, all military personnel were released from the base.
After the 5th night, military executives suddenly showed up. They interviewed people. They told everyone on the base who had seen these UFOs that they were dismissed. They told them also their clothes and things had been contaminated by this UFO.
Are the mysterious lights in these videos and accounts by witnesses like the Skurchaks evidence that extraterrestrials are visiting our planet? For now, the answer remains a mystery, but each MUFON investigation is added to their ever-growing database in the hope that one day they will provide vital clues.
Every time you investigate, you're adding to the database of knowledge, and then you look for trends. It's those sorts of little details that you just store away until they come up again, and then maybe it tells you something interesting and important.
While MUFON has amassed a large inventory of reports they cannot explain, there are a few that stand out as truly astonishing. One of the most compelling of all involved multiple witnesses who saw not only a craft, but also alien visitors. Oklahoma, July 2021. A man named Randy Young has come forward to report a UFO encounter that happened almost 50 years earlier in 1975. The story begins when he was 10 years old at the Miracle Mountains boarding school in Hartshorn, Oklahoma.
Miracle Mountain was kind of out in the boonies of Oklahoma. That day, my brother and I were out in the sandbox, and we saw this circular, shining light. It was probably 2,000 or so feet up in the air, and it didn't have the movements of an airplane. It was just hovering, and as it got darker, this craft got closer. It had lights that went through the midsection all the way around, and it had this classic saucer-type shape.
For decades, Randy and his brother kept their extraordinary encounter to themselves, for fear of how it would be received.
You didn't want people thinking that you're crazy, you didn't want to ruin your reputation, but in the back of my mind, that story was always there. And with all that has been going on with the government, military jets that are, tracking these things, and there's been a lot more talk about it recently. I'm like, okay, if they're talking this big at this level, they got to hear this story. They need to know about what had happened in Hartshorn in 1975, and so I contacted MUFON.
The reports reached the desk of Mindy Talkfest, the Oklahoma State MUFON director.
Randy filed an official report through MUFON.com, and I immediately knew after reading it that this case could be a very, very important case to all of UFO history. I first reached out to Randy and interviewed him. The next person I spoke to was Philip Buchanan. Philip was one of the older children at the school at the time, and so he has one of the more complete memories of what transpired there and the operations of the school itself. And then I spoke with the teacher via email, and the teacher described that some of the kids were hiding under the beds because they were very terrified, and some of the kids were looking out the window. They reported to see shape-shifting entities out there. They just said it keeps changing.
What Mindy found out after doing all that work is that these kids were recalling the exact same thing. As the witnesses were telling their stories years later, one of the things Mindy asked them to do was to actually draw the UFO that they'd seen. And the consistency is amazing. And not only are they telling the same story, but they're describing the same craft. It shows us that these old historic cases still have something to offer.
I think that we need an organization like MUFON. I think we need to have a database for all these different incidents, and I think that we need to have as many eyes and as many investigators on this as possible. We need to figure out what's going on.
There's been a lot of excitement around this story because there were a lot of things that corroborated each other. We find value in all UFO reports, and some of the older ones serve to validate some other sightings that may be in our database. And so the older historic cases really have a lot of value whenever it comes to ufology.
Tolkien is Real Theory proposes that J.R.R. Tolkien's works of fantasy literature are actually based on true historical events and beings. Proponents argue that Tolkien's extensive linguistic and mythological knowledge allowed him to decipher and translate ancient texts describing real Middle-earth events. Some researchers claim to have identified geographical locations in Europe and the Middle East that correspond to places described in Tolkien's works. The theory suggests that races like elves, dwarves, and hobbits once coexisted with humans, but have since gone into hiding or become extinct. Advocates point to unexplained archaeological findings and folklore from various cultures as evidence supporting the reality of Tolkien's world. Some believers argue that Tolkien's academic career was a cover for his work in translating and revealing these hidden histories. The theory incorporates ideas from alternative archaeology, proposing that certain ancient artifacts are actually of elven or dwarven origin. Proponents believe that studying Tolkien's works as historical documents could lead to discoveries about lost civilizations and technologies. Some researchers suggest that certain human bloodlines carry traces of Elvish or Numenorian ancestry, explaining exceptional longevity or abilities in some individuals. Advocates argue that the theory explains the deep resonance many people feel with Tolkien's world and characters. The theory proposes that magic, as described in Tolkien's works, was once a real force in the world, with remnants still accessible to certain individuals.
We'll be underground in the money pit for the very first time.
Tomoki Uemiya is a Japanese individual who claims to receive messages from extraterrestrial beings, particularly from the Pleiades star cluster. Proponents argue that Uemiya's consistent and detailed communications since 1994 suggest a genuine connection with non-terrestrial intelligence. Some researchers believe Uemiya's messages contain advanced spiritual and technological information beyond current human understanding. The theory suggests that the Pleiades, a star cluster visible to the naked eye, hosts a highly evolved civilization interested in Earth's development. Advocates point to the coherence and depth of Uemiya's channeled information as evidence of its authenticity. Some believers argue that Uemiya's experiences align with other contactee accounts, indicating a broader pattern of extraterrestrial communication. The theory incorporates ideas from both ufology and spiritual traditions, proposing a cosmic interconnectedness. Proponents believe that studying Uemiya's messages could lead to advancements in human consciousness and technology. Some researchers suggest that Uemiya's ability to receive these messages indicates an innate human capacity for interstellar telepathy. Advocates argue that the spiritual and ethical content of the message